Hey, this is David from the Young Folks, and I'm here today to talk more about Get a Life. I did my first review of the 90s sitcom about 2 weeks ago, and I thought, hey, this is going to be my summer show. But I haven't watched it in 2 weeks, but, life got in the way. So, I'm a little time pressed right now, so my other reviews are going to be much better quality. I have a Canon camera, I'm going to be using that, but today I'm using the iPhone because it's got pretty good quality. An iMovie app, love it. It's a miracle. So, I've decided I'm not going to do written reviews for the show anymore because when reviewing a show from the 90s, like Get a Life, as a recap during the summer, not everyone's going to want to read that, and that's not me judging anyone because I get it. It's an old show. My first review was it absolutely overanalyzed. So I want to try to make these as quick, interesting, and accessible as they can be. So Get a Life, which I got what I thought was the first season of, but was really just 4 episodes, rip-off, is a 90s sitcom starring Chris Elliott as a 30-year-old paperboy who still lives with his parents and his hijinks. Now, this is one of those shows that is what Arrested Development used to be before Netflix brought it up. Like, sorry guys, if you still think it's underrated, you're living in the past. So, Get a Life only ran 2 seasons, and it has a small but very devoted fan base. And part of why Fox hated the show, apparently they did, is because it's a very specific set of humor, which is around now, but I actually get why it didn't work in the 90s. It's kind of a homage to sitcoms of the 80s, but it's also a sitcom itself. It's silly, but yet it's also very dark. This show is actually well known for being one of the only network shows to kill off its character, not only once, but 12 times, because the plot lines are very surreal as they go on. Chris Elliott's character dies 12 times, and I've only seen one of those episodes, and that was a funny death, but the show is... It's kind of cool because what the writers did was, apparently David Merkin, the creator of the show, he would go to Fox and he would give them scripts that appealed to Fox's mentalities, to be very family friendly, have morals at the end, and he would go film the episodes and he wouldn't use any of those scripts. He would just flat out improvise all of it and tell the actors to do their thing and make the episodes he wants, which is talk about a way to get the show you want. And the show is actually well known. It had a few writers who went on to do big things. Bob Odenkirk, Saul Goodman himself. He was one of the writers. This is before he did Mr. Show. Charlie freaking Kaufman. Eternal Sunshine, Being John Malkovich, Schenectady, New York. He was one of the writers too. And I haven't really gotten to the surreal parts of the show because, as it turns out, the show gets really dark. Like right now, Chris Elliott's character is just very silly and kind of endearing. Apparently he gets to be really psychopathic as it goes on. But right now I'm not there. But that being said, I can see a lot of why this show has a cult following already. Because the first episode, I liked it. What's interesting about the show is I can't really explain what it is because a lot of it is very hokey, very 90s sitcom. Yet some of it is kind of poking at it too. Like you hear some jokes and you're like, huh. And it's very low budget, but it's got a charm to it. It has its own feel. It might not be like the best thing ever, but there's a lot of clever touches, and I'm very entertained by it. I've seen like 6 episodes, and there's just something very likable for me at least. And Chris Elliott, actually, I usually can't stand the guy. And I told my friend about the show, and he was like, I don't think I could possibly sit through a show where Chris Elliott is the star. And I get that, but Chris Elliott is so into his character that I can't help but respect him. And what's interesting for me about the show is I feel as though Chris Elliott's the only character who doesn't know he's in a sitcom, or maybe does know he's in a sitcom. The point of that being, it doesn't even matter which, because everyone else in the show is kind of like a sitcom-y character, but he's just flat out weird. The things he does, the things he says, he's strange, but it works. He's kind of a different element of the show. He makes it unique. So I liked the first episode. Good episode. Check out my review. So the second episode, prettiest life, the prettiest week of my life, is my favorite out of the episodes I've seen so far. So in the episode, Chris Elliott tries to become a male model. That's the plot line. So I know what you're thinking. A lot of jokes about Chris Elliott being ugly. He probably fails. There are some jokes about Chris Elliott being ugly because he's an ugly guy. But what I like about this show is kind of in this episode. It's genuine. It's not that mean-spirited. It's like, there's some mean-spirited jokes, but the feel isn't. Chris actually goes and he becomes a male model, and the head of the male modeling program, it's very skeezy, is Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's underrated brother. He's not Bill Murray, guys, but he's so likable. Come on, give Brian Doyle Murray a chance. So he goes to do it, and he's with all these other male models. Like, some of them are really over the top. There's this one guy who's like, my name is Sapphire. And Chris is like, oh, yeah, Sapphire? Did you say you had a nose job? And everyone's like, oh! And that's what I'm talking about. Everyone else acts like they're in a sitcom, but Chris Elliott's almost like he's kind of exempt from it somehow. But another funny thing about the show is a lot of the funniest moments in this episode are not what the laugh track laughs at. And apparently, David Merkin, after the first few episodes, he started writing around the laugh track, meaning that he would try to make jokes that were deliberately kind of weird and strange to get the laugh track to laugh at them. And it adds to the quirkiness of the show, and it's very funny. It's another thing that adds to the fact that it's kind of a parody, but it's also kind of a sitcom itself. An example of one of those funny jokes, well, not jokes, but it's kind of some gags, is in the last part of the episode. Chris, what does he do? Oh, what do they call those? He goes to one of those catwalk things, and he sabotages it because he wants to have this moment in the sun. And he goes out, and it's in slow motion, and there's this voiceover by him, and he's like, and that was the best day of my life. My adoring fans staring at me everywhere. Even my old teacher was there, watching me soak it up in the sun. And you just, you go over, and you see, a shot of Brian Doyle Murray just eating a sandwich, oblivious to everything. And what's called, Chris Elliott's walking by, and it's like, the fans love me. One fat man threw a shoe at me. I'm not quite sure why, but I appreciated the gesture. And you just see, a shoe fly behind him. And there's something very funny about it, but the laugh track doesn't laugh at it, because I feel like it didn't know how. It's not a joke, it's not literal. I laughed at the joke myself. It's one of those things, it's where you don't have to be a robot. You don't have to laugh because the laugh track tells you to. You laugh because you want to. And, I don't know, the episode itself, it's never, winking at you. We know this isn't a real sitcom. That was kind of the Arrested Development wink there. But, it goes for it. It does its own thing. You're not quite sure, what it's supposed to be. But for me, that doesn't matter. I think it has its own feel. It's entertaining. And I respect the show. It's not just, being cynical and, being look how funny we are. This show is actually funny because it doesn't do that. It does its own thing, which I appreciate a lot, especially from a show from the 90s. So the next episode, which is called Dadicus, is about Chris Elliott. So he's a paperboy. So all of his best friends are 8-year-olds, his associates. They're all other paperboys. So there's a father-son paperboy thing every year. And Chris and his father used to do that in the 60s. But all of Chris's friends are talking about it, and Chris is like, you know what, I'm going to come and beat all of your asses. So he goes to do just that. And another cool thing about the show is Chris Elliott's actual father plays Chris's dad. And it's pretty funny, he's always in pajamas in all of his shots, and apparently that was because Chris Elliott just wanted to be comfortable on set. Well, Bob Elliott, his father, he just wanted to be comfortable on set, so he just always wore pajamas. So a lot of what's funny about this episode is also the stuff the laugh track doesn't get. There's a lot of funny small visual gags in this episode, especially when they actually get to before that, Chris's friends, the little kids. There's a really funny scene in the first scene of the episode, and they're at a diner, and one of the kids is like, I'll get a jelly donut, and Chris Elliott's like, you most certainly will not. Do you know what that does to your cholesterol? You are never too young to get healthy. And he's like, okay, I'll get a bran muffin. And then the other kid's like, I'll get a a double chocolate sundae, and Chris Elliot's like, you know what, that actually sounds pretty good. I think I'll have that too. And that scene is just fun. It's a weird sense of humor, and if it's your sense of humor, you'll like it. It's not the Fox sense of humor. It's just there's something very. It's got good flow. It was enjoyable to watch. It's very silly, but it's funny. But the visual gags I was talking about, those are by far the funniest. Like, they get Chris and his dad, who Chris's father begrudgingly goes. He doesn't want to go to the games. They get there, and everything's insane. It's like gladiator games. There's acrobats going everywhere. There are people with sticks hitting each other. And the funniest one is when they're just having a conversation, Chris and his dad, and one guy in the back gets like hit by a stick and falls into a pool of water, and then he's not moving. He's dead. He's just like lying on the pool, and you're like, oh my god, this is brutal. And stuff like that's funny. There's another very funny side. Another thing I like about the show is this show is kind of mean-spirited in the Seinfeld way. Not like the licking the letter Seinfeld way, but in like there's no moral Seinfeld way. So there's one part when they're losing the game, and Chris's dad's like, what are we going to do, Chris? We're going to lose. And he's like, you know what, Dad? The brain is always stronger than the arm. And he's like, announcer, that man's father is a stepfather. And the announcer's like, get him out of my sight. And they knock over the kid and his dad. And it's so awful, but it's funny. And there's another funny gag when it's this is one of those things that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, like it's making fun of sitcoms. When Chris and his dad are like, okay, we've got to get into the games. And Chris is like, okay, Dad, let's pay attention. Look, Dad, it's Mom. Wave to Mom. And the mom's going like this, and they're waving, and they get knocked over and lose that match. And then throughout the episode, you keep seeing the mom doing that. It's like, look, Chris, look what you've done to your mother. Look how sad she is. And she's like going like this. And throughout the episode, it's kind of that silly over-the-topness. But there's just something very likable about it for me. And at the end of the episode, also, there's no moral, which I really like. In the beginning of the episode, there's a reference to, Bob Elliott, his delivery is kind of, he's a curmudgeon-y dad. He's like, what do you think this is, that Cat in the Cradle song? And Chris is like, I can't even believe you compare it to that. And then in the end, Chris is like, I know what'll cheer you up, Dad, because they lose the games. And he takes out a guitar that he picks out from like a bush, and he starts playing Cats in the Cradle. And then his dad just hits him with the stick, and the episode ends. And that's the kind of show that Get a Life is. Get a Life is very silly. It's kind of like a 90s sitcom, but it's got that edge to it. And there's a lot of random stuff that happens. Some of the jokes that Chris Elliott makes make no sense or just very strange. But if you watch the show and you like it, you'll know what kind of show it is. And I gotta give the show credit. This show almost makes me like Stand by R.E.M., which is the theme song. I like a few songs by R.E.M., but that song is so annoying. But I almost like it because of this show. So I'm going to try to do these reviews more regularly as they go on. Probably do 2 episodes or 1 episode. Somewhat weekly, maybe even daily. So check back if you want to, and if not, get a life. Oh my god, I made that joke.